The morning sun rose over Seoul, but its light couldn't chase away the darkness that had settled over the city. Daewon Kim stood in the crowded square, his face blank as stone. Around him, thousands of people watched in silence. On the platform ahead, 5 men and women knelt with their hands tied behind their backs. Vrexian soldiers stood guard, their tall bodies covered in dark armor that seemed to drink in the light. Daewon had seen this scene too many times before. 15 years of occupation had taught him to hide his feelings. Any sign of emotion could mark you as a rebel sympathizer. The Vrexians had sensors that could detect rapid heartbeats and changes in body temperature, so Daewon breathed slowly and kept his face empty, even as his heart screamed inside his chest. The Vrexian commander spoke in their harsh, clicking language. A translation device projected his words in Korean. "These humans broke the law. They attacked our supply depot. They killed 3 of our soldiers. This is the price of resistance." The executions were quick. Plasma beams burned through the air. The bodies fell. The crowd remained silent. Speaking out meant joining the dead on that platform. Daewon had learned that lesson long ago, on the day he watched his own unit get wiped out trying to defend the city. The crowd dispersed slowly. Daewon walked to the factory where he worked as a supervisor. It was a large building that used to make electronics. Now it produced parts for Vrexian machines. He didn't know what the parts did. The aliens didn't share that information with their human workers. Inside the factory, Daewon checked the production lines. The workers moved like ghosts, their eyes dull with exhaustion. Most had been here since dawn. They would work until sunset with one short break for food. This was life under the Vrexians. Work, obey, survive. Nothing more. Across the city, in a different building, Hana Park stared at the screens in front of her. She was an engineer, forced to work in one of the Vrexian research facilities. Her job was to test their technology and make sure it worked properly. The Vrexians were smart, but they were also lazy. They made humans do the boring work while they supervised. Today, Hana was testing a shield generator. It was a small device that created an invisible barrier around objects. The Vrexians used these shields on everything: their ships, their buildings, their soldiers. The shields made them nearly impossible to hurt. Hana ran the test again. She watched the numbers on her screen carefully. Something caught her eye. For just a fraction of a second, the shield flickered. It happened when the device switched from one frequency to another. The gap was tiny, less than half a second. But it was there. Her heart began to race. She looked around quickly. No Vrexian supervisors were watching her station. Hana saved the data to a hidden file and deleted it from the main system. This discovery could mean something, or it could mean nothing, but it was the first interesting thing she had found in 5 years of working here. In another part of Seoul, Tae-Yang Lee crouched in an alley with 3 other young people. They were planning something dangerous. Tae-Yang was only 24, but he looked older. The occupation had aged everyone. His eyes were hard, filled with anger that never quite went away. "The supply depot is on the east side," whispered one of his companions, a woman named Yuri. "2 guards at the front. Maybe more inside. We hit them at night," Tae-Yang said, fast and hard. "Blow the depot and run before they can respond." Another man shook his head. "It's too risky. They have sensors everywhere." "Everything is risky," Tae-Yang snapped. "Breathing is risky under these monsters. At least this way we fight back." They argued in harsh whispers. Finally they agreed. Tomorrow night. One last strike against their oppressors. Tae-Yang thought about his family. His parents had died in the first week of the invasion, killed when a Vrexian ship destroyed their apartment building. His sister had died of sickness 3 years later. The Vrexians didn't waste medicine on humans. He had nothing left to lose. That night, under the cover of darkness, Tae-Yang and his group approached the supply depot. They carried homemade explosives, crude devices made from stolen materials. Their plan was simple: get close, plant the bombs, run. But the Vrexians were not stupid. They had learned from previous attacks. As soon as Tae-Yang's group reached the depot fence, alarms screamed into the night. Lights blazed. Vrexian soldiers poured out of the building, their weapons firing. The rebels ran. 2 of them fell immediately, cut down by plasma fire. Tae-Yang sprinted through the streets, his lungs burning. Yuri ran beside him until a blast caught her in the back. She fell without a sound. Tae-Yang kept running. He could hear the Vrexians behind him, their heavy footsteps echoing off the buildings. He turned corner after corner trying to lose them. Finally, he ducked into a dark doorway and pressed himself against the wall. The sounds of pursuit faded. Taeyang waited, his whole body shaking. Blood ran down his arm from a wound he hadn't noticed. The mission had failed completely. His friends were dead, and he had achieved nothing. He stumbled through the dark streets until he found a building with a small hidden sign. A medical clinic. It was illegal, of course. The Vrexians controlled all official medicine. But some humans ran secret clinics for rebels and resistance fighters. Taeyang pushed open the door. Inside, a woman looked up from where she was organizing supplies. Her name was Ji-won Choi, though Taeyang didn't know that yet. She was a doctor, one of the few who had survived the occupation with her skills intact. "You're bleeding," Ji-won said calmly. "Sit down." She worked quickly, cleaning his wound and bandaging it. She didn't ask questions. In this world, questions were dangerous. "Thank you," Taeyang muttered. Ji-won studied his face. "You were part of tonight's attack, weren't you?" "The supply depot?" Taeyang tensed, ready to run. "Relax," Ji-won said. "I'm not going to turn you in. But you need to be smarter. Blind attacks don't work anymore. The Vrexians adapt too quickly." "Then what do we do?" Taeyang asked bitterly. "Just give up?" "No," said a voice from the doorway. "We get organized," Taeyang turned. A man stepped into the light. He was older, maybe in his 40s, with gray streaks in his hair. His eyes were sharp and calculating. "My name is Daewon," the man said, "and I think it's time we stopped fighting like scattered children. If we're going to beat the Vrexians, we need to work together." Ji-won nodded. "I've been telling him the same thing. There are others. Scientists, engineers, fighters. All working separately. All failing separately." Daewon looked at Taeyang. "I heard about a woman. An engineer who works in the research facility. She might have found something important. Something about their shields." "Their shields are unbreakable," Taeyang said. "Maybe," Daewon replied. "Or maybe we just haven't found the right way to break them yet." Outside, the city lay quiet under the alien ships that hovered in the sky. But in that small clinic, something was beginning. A spark of hope in the darkness. 3 people who refused to give up. 3 people who believed that humans could still fight back. The resistance was about to change. The abandoned subway tunnel smelled of rust and old water. Daewon stood in the center of a circle of people, their faces lit by dim electric lanterns. These were the leaders of Seoul's scattered resistance cells. Getting them all in one place had taken weeks of careful planning. "We've been fighting alone for too long," Daewon said. His voice echoed off the concrete walls. "Every cell does their own attacks. Every group works separately. And what do we have to show for it?" "Dead friends and nothing changed," a man in the corner spoke up. His name was Byung-ho Nam, and before the invasion he had run a large company. Now he used his old business connections to smuggle supplies. "What are you suggesting? That we all work together? The Vrexians will notice if we coordinate. Their surveillance systems will catch us. Then we'll be smarter than their systems," said a young woman sitting near the wall. Soo-jin Yoon was thin and pale from spending too much time underground. She was one of the best hackers left on Earth. "I've been studying their network. It's good, but it's not perfect. I can create windows where they can't see us." Taeyang shifted uncomfortably. His arm still hurt from the wound he got during the failed depot attack. "And then what? Even if we coordinate, we can't beat their shields. We can't hurt their ships. We're fighting with sticks against thunder." "Maybe not," Daewon said. He gestured to someone at the back of the group. "Come forward, Hana." Hana Park stepped into the light. She looked nervous, her hands clutching a small data device. "I work at the research facility," she said quietly. "I test their technology. Last week I found something." She activated the device. A holographic image appeared showing waves of energy. "This is their shield system. It operates on rotating frequencies. The shield switches from one frequency to another constantly, making it impossible to find a weak point. We know this already." Someone muttered. "Wait," Hana continued. "When it switches frequencies, there's a gap. 0.3 seconds. The shield is down during that transition." The tunnel fell silent. Everyone stared at the hologram. Byung-ho leaned forward. 0.3 seconds. That's nothing. No human could react that fast." "A human couldn't," Hana agreed, "but a machine could. If we built a weapon that could detect the frequency change and fire automatically during that window, we could hurt them." Daewon finished. "We could actually hurt them." The meeting erupted into discussion. Some people were excited. Others were skeptical. They argued about whether it was possible, whether they had the resources, whether the risk was worth it. Sujin spoke up again. There's something else you should know. I hacked into one of their communication channels last week. I found files about other planets. Earth isn't the only world they've conquered. There are 16 others. The tunnel went quiet again. They're strip mining those planets, Sujin continued, taking all the resources until there's nothing left. Then they move on. Earth is next on their list. How long do we have? Ji-won asked. She had come to the meeting with Tae Yang. Based on what I read, maybe 10 years before they start the final extraction. After that, Earth will be dead. No atmosphere, no water, nothing. Daewon looked around at the group. So we have two choices. We can keep fighting our small battles and lose slowly, or we can work together and maybe, just maybe, we can save our world. One by one, the resistance leaders nodded. They would work together. They would build this weapon, and they would fight back with everything they had. Over the next weeks, the resistance began to change. Byung-ho used his connections to gather materials. Sujin worked on hacking into Vrexian supply routes to steal the components they needed. Hana began designing the weapon that could exploit the shield weakness. But they needed something else. Something the Vrexians used in their own weapons. A power source strong enough to generate the beam they needed. There's only one place to get it, Ta Yang said during one of their planning sessions. We need to steal a Vrexian plasma rifle. Daewon nodded slowly. Their soldiers carry them. But getting close enough to take one... I can do it, Ta Yang said. My group knows the patrol routes. We can ambush a small unit. Take Quan Wu with you, Hana said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. My brother. He's young, but he's fast and smart. He wants to help. Tae Yang met her eyes. You sure? This is dangerous. Everything is dangerous now, Hana replied. At least this way he'll be doing something that matters. 2 nights later, Tae Yang and Quan Wu lay on a rooftop overlooking an alley. Below them, a Vrexian patrol of 3 soldiers walked their regular route. The patrol came by every night at the same time. The Vrexians were efficient, but that efficiency made them predictable. On my signal, Tae Yang whispered. Quan Wu nodded, his face tight with concentration. The Vrexians walked into the kill zone. Tae Yang dropped a homemade flash grenade. The explosion lit up the alley, blinding the aliens. Tae Yang and Quan Wu dropped down, firing weapons they had made from stolen parts. The fight was brief and brutal. 2 Vrexians fell quickly. The third one fought back, its plasma rifle spraying fire. A bolt caught Quan Wu in the side, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard. Tae Yang roared and charged. He tackled the Vrexian, fighting it hand to hand. The alien was stronger, but Tae Yang was desperate. He got his hands on the Vrexian's own knife and drove it into a weak point in its armor. The alien went still. Tae Yang grabbed the plasma rifles and ran to Quan Wu. The young man was bleeding badly, his face pale. Can you walk? I think so, Quan Wu gasped. They stumbled through the dark streets, Tae Yang supporting Quan Wu's weight. Behind them, alarms began to sound. The Vrexians had found their dead patrol. They made it to Ji-won's clinic. She took one look at Quan Wu and immediately got to work. This is bad, she muttered, cutting away his shirt. The plasma burned through muscle. I need proper surgical tools. Use what you have, Tae Yang said. Please, his sister will kill me if he dies. Ji-won worked through the night. Her supplies were limited, her tools primitive by modern standards. But she had skill and determination. As the sun rose, Quan Wu was still alive, though weak and feverish. Hana arrived at the clinic. She saw her brother on the table and went pale. What happened? We got the rifle, Tae Yang said. He held up the Vrexian weapon. But the cost... Hana looked at him, her eyes hard. Was it worth it? Was this weapon worth my brother's life? I don't know, Tae Yang said honestly. But without it, we can't build the shield breaker. And without that, we're all dead anyway. Hana stood silent for a long moment. Then she took the rifle from him. I'll study this. I'll make it work. And you better pray my brother survives, because if he doesn't... She didn't finish the threat. She didn't need to. Outside, the city was waking up. Vrexian ships moved through the sky. Humans went to their forced jobs. Everything looked the same as it had for 15 years. But in that hidden clinic, with a stolen weapon and a wounded young man, the seeds of rebellion continued to grow. The meeting took place in the basement of an old restaurant. Daewon and Ji-won arrived separately, taking different routes to avoid suspicion. They were meeting someone dangerous. Someone who worked for the enemy. Mi-sun Han sat at a table in the shadows. She was middle-aged, her face lined with stress. For 5 years, she had worked as a translator for the Rexian command. Most humans saw her as a traitor, but Byung-ho had made contact with her weeks ago, and she had been feeding information to the resistance ever since. "Thank you for coming," Mi-sun said quietly. Her hand shook slightly. "Every time I do this, I think they'll catch me." "Why do you help us?" Daewon asked. He needed to trust her, but trust was hard to give these days. Mi-sun's face tightened. "My daughter died in the invasion. She was 8 years old. I blamed the human military for fighting back, for making the Rexians angry. I thought if we just cooperated, they would leave us alone." She laughed bitterly. "I was stupid. I've spent 5 years listening to them talk. I know the truth now. They never planned to leave. They're going to destroy this planet." "We know about the mining operation," Ji-won said. "Then you don't know everything," Mi-sun replied. She pulled out a small data chip. "This contains files I copied from their system. They're building something, an orbital platform. When it's finished, they'll use it to drill into Earth's core. The process will take 10 years, and when it's done, Earth will be a dead rock." Daewon took the chip. "How long until the platform is finished?" 8 months. Maybe less." The weight of those words settled over them. 8 months. Not the 10 years they had thought. Time was running out faster than they knew. Back at the Resistance headquarters, Hana worked with a new arrival. His name was Dong-hyun Lim, and he had been a weapons engineer before the invasion. Now he was old and tired, but his mind was still sharp. Together they were trying to reverse engineer the stolen Vrexian plasma rifle. "The power source is the key," Dong-hyun said, pointing at the rifle's core. "This generates enough energy to punch through their shields during that gap you found. But we need something bigger. Something that can generate a much stronger pulse." "How much stronger?" Hana asked. 10 times, maybe 20. Enough to take down a ship's shields completely. Hana ran calculations on her computer. "That would require the output of a small nuclear reactor." "Yes," Dong-hyun agreed. "Which we don't have." Soo-jin, who was working at another terminal, spoke up. "Actually, we might. There's an old reactor near the city. It was shut down after the invasion. The Vrexians never bothered with it because it's old technology. They just locked it up and left it. Can we access it?" Daewon asked. "If I can hack the security, yes, but..." Soo-jin pulled up a map on her screen. "It's deep in their territory. And according to my surveillance, they're using the building for something. There's activity there." Tae-young volunteered to scout the reactor. He took 2 other fighters with him. They moved through the city at night, avoiding Vrexian patrols and security drones. The old reactor building was dark and massive, surrounded by a high fence. They watched from a nearby building for hours. Vrexian soldiers went in and out regularly. More concerning, they heard sounds from inside. Screaming. Human screaming. "It's a detention center," one of Tae-yang's companions whispered. "They're keeping prisoners there." Tae-yang's jaw tightened. They needed that reactor, but if they activated it, what would happen to the prisoners inside? He reported back to Daewon. The resistance leaders gathered once again to discuss their options. "We can't just turn on a nuclear reactor with people inside," Ji-won said. "The radiation would kill them. But without that reactor, we can't build the weapon," Byung-ho argued. "And without the weapon, the Vrexians will kill everyone on Earth anyway." They argued back and forth. The moral weight of the decision pressed down on all of them. Finally, Daewon made the call. "We rescue the prisoners first, then we take the reactor." "That's suicide," someone protested. "We don't have the fighters for a rescue operation." "Then we'll have to be smart instead of strong," Daewon replied. "Soo-jin, can you cut their power?" "For maybe 10 minutes. After that, their backup systems will kick in." 10 minutes will have to be enough. They spent a week planning. Every detail had to be perfect. They would have one chance, no more. The night of the rescue was cold and dark. Soo-jin sat in her hidden bunker, her fingers flying over her keyboard. She had broken into the Vrexian power grid. At exactly midnight, she hit the final key. The lights around the old reactor building went dark. Daewon led the assault team. 20 fighters armed with stolen weapons and homemade explosives. They cut through the fence and moved quickly to the building's entrance. The doors were electronic and had locked when the power died. They blasted them open inside chaos. Vrexian guards stumbled in the darkness, their night vision temporarily blinded by the power surge Soo-jin had sent through their systems. The resistance fighters moved through the building like shadows, their actions practiced and precise. They found the prisoners on the lower level. 47 humans locked in cells, many of them injured or sick. The Vrexians had been using them for experiments, testing weapons and biotech on living subjects. "Can you walk?" Daewon asked a woman in the first cell. She nodded, her eyes wide with shock. You're human soldiers. Close enough. Come on, we need to move." They freed the prisoners and started leading them out. But the 10 minutes were almost up. Sujin's voice crackled over their radio. "Power coming back online in 60 seconds. "Move faster," Daewon ordered. They were halfway to the exit when the lights blazed on. Alarms screamed. Vrexian reinforcements began arriving. The resistance fighters formed a defensive line, holding off the aliens while the prisoners escaped. 8 fighters died in that building. They gave their lives so others could reach freedom. When the last prisoner was out, Daewon ordered the retreat. They ran through the streets, scattering in all directions. Among the freed prisoners was a man named Hyunwoo Song. He had been an astronaut before the invasion. The Vrexians had captured him and tortured him for information about Earth's old space stations. Now, as Jiwon treated his injuries in the clinic, he shared what he knew. "I worked on the International Space Station," Hyunwoo said. "I know the layout of orbital structures. If the Vrexians are building a platform up there, I can tell you how it's designed." Daewon leaned forward. "Can you tell us how to destroy it?" Hyunwoo managed a weak smile. "Better. I can tell you how to board it." 1 week later, Hana and Donghyun finished building their prototype weapon. It was crude, cobbled together from human and alien technology. But when they tested it on a captured Vrexian drone, the results were clear. The drone's shields flickered and died. "It works," Hana whispered. "It actually works." Now they needed to get close enough to a real target to use it. Close enough to make a difference. Close enough to change everything. The resistance was ready. The Vrexians had no idea what was coming. The corridors were collapsing. Metal groaned and buckled as the ship tore itself apart. Daewon's team sprinted through the chaos, jumping over debris and dodging falling panels. "Left at the next junction," Hyunwoo shouted. He was limping, but he kept moving. Behind them, they could hear Vrexian soldiers still trying to stop them. But the aliens were also trying to escape. Everyone was running now. Kwan-woo looked back at the corridor they had left. "Taeyang, keep moving," Daewon ordered. His voice was hard, but his eyes were full of pain. He had lost too many people today. They reached the docking bay where Yan-hee waited with the shuttle. She had the engines running, ready to launch the second everyone was aboard. "Where's Team 2? She called out. "Coming!" Daewon replied. He spoke into his radio. Hana, Sujin status, static. Then Hana's voice, breathless. "We're 2 corridors away." The door was sealed. "We had to find another route. Move faster!" "We've got 6 minutes." In the generator room, Hana helped Sujin to her feet. The wound in Sujin's side was bleeding badly, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. They stumbled into the corridor and ran. A Vrexian soldier appeared in front of them. His weapon was raised. Hana froze. She had no gun, no way to fight back. The Vrexian aimed. Then a shot rang out from behind Hana. The alien fell. Taeyang stumbled into view, his body battered and bloody. He had escaped his captors in the chaos. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll hold them off." "You're coming with us," Hana said. "Can't run anymore," Taeyang replied. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds. "My legs." "I can't make it, but I can buy you time." More Vrexians were coming down the corridor. Taeyang raised his stolen weapon. "Tell Daewon." "Tell him it was worth it. Tell him we won," Hana wanted to argue, but Sujin pulled her away. "We have to go now," they ran. Behind them, they heard Taeyang's weapon firing, heard his voice shouting defiance one final time. Then an explosion, then silence. Hana and Sujin reached the docking bay with 90 seconds to spare. Daewon pulled them onto the shuttle. "Everyone accounted for?" "Not everyone," Hana said quietly. Daewon understood. He looked at the empty seats where his team should have been. 15 had gone up. 9 were coming back. "Launch," he ordered. Yan-hee slammed the controls forward. The shuttle shot out of the docking bay just as another explosion rocked the command ship. She pushed the engines beyond their limits, diving toward Earth. Above them, the Vrexian ship's self-destruct reached its conclusion. The massive vessel exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky. From Seoul, Millions of people watched their oppressor's flagship die. They poured into the streets, screaming, crying, celebrating. The shuttle was damaged from the escape. Alarms blared. "We're losing altitude too fast," Yanhi said. "I can't control it." "Brace for impact." They crashed in the mountains outside Seoul. The shuttle tumbled down a rocky slope before finally stopping. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Daewon kicked open the emergency hatch. "Everyone out, move." They pulled themselves from the wreckage. Hyunwoo had a broken arm. Jiwon had a concussion. Sujin's wound had reopened and was bleeding again, but they were alive. From their position in the mountains, they could see Seoul spread out below. Fires burned across the city. Not the fires of destruction, but the fires of freedom. Humans were taking back their world. Over the next week, the tide turned across the planet. Without their shields, the Vrexians were vulnerable. Their advantage was gone. Human resistance fighters attacked with renewed courage. In city after city, the aliens were defeated or driven off. Many Vrexians tried to retreat to their ships and leave Earth. But human forces, now coordinated and fighting together, destroyed many of the ships before they could escape. The aliens who surrendered were taken prisoner. The shuttle survivors eventually made their way back to Seoul. Jiwon immediately set up a medical station to treat wounded fighters. Sujin, despite her injury, began working to restore Earth's communication networks. Hana found her brother Quan Wu in the Resistance headquarters. They held each other without speaking. They had both survived. That was more than many families could say. Daewon met with Byung-ho and the other Resistance leaders. They had won the battle, but now they had to win the peace. "We need to prevent revenge attacks," Byung-ho said. "Our people are angry. They want to hurt the Vrexians the way we were hurt. Then we stop them," Daewon replied. "We're better than that. We're better than them." Misun emerged from hiding. She had expected to be arrested or executed for her work as a collaborator. Instead, Daewon asked her to help negotiate with captured Vrexian officers. "You speak their language," he said, "and you understand both sides. We need someone who can build a bridge, not a wall." Misun worked tirelessly to establish communication protocols. She helped prevent several incidents where humans nearly killed Vrexian prisoners out of rage and grief. It was hard, thankless work. But slowly, she helped create a framework for peace. 3 months after the command ship's destruction, the last Vrexian forces left Earth. Their empire was collapsing. News had spread to their other conquered worlds. 17 planets rose up in rebellion, each using the shield frequency data that Sujin had broadcast. Earth began to rebuild. It was a long, difficult process. Entire cities had to be reconstructed. Families mourned their dead. But there was also hope. Real hope. For the first time in 15 years, Byung-ho helped form a new provisional government. Representatives from every nation worked together to ensure Earth would never be caught unprepared again. They began building defenses, training soldiers, and studying captured Vrexian technology. Hana and Sujin led the technology research program. They reverse-engineered alien ships, weapons, and systems. Within a year, Earth had its first hybrid vessels, ships that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Taiyang's name was carved into a memorial along with thousands of others who had died in the resistance. Daewon visited the memorial often. He would stand there for hours, remembering the faces of the fallen. One day, Jiwon found him there. "You should stop blaming yourself," she said gently. "They followed me," Daewon replied. "All those people. They trusted me and they died. They chose to fight, just like you did. Their deaths meant something." Daewon was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. 5 years passed. Earth transformed. New cities rose. The population slowly recovered. And humanity built a fleet of ships, ready to explore the stars on their own terms. On the day of the first deep space exploration launch, Daewon stood with his old resistance comrades. His hair was fully gray now. He walked with a cane from an old injury, but his eyes were still sharp. "We did it," Hana said, watching the ship prepare for launch. "We actually did it. Taiyang should be here to see this," Quan Wu said quietly. "He is here," Daewon replied. "All of them are. Every person who fought, who died, who refused to give up. They're in everything we built." The ship launched, its engines burning bright as it climbed toward space. The crowd cheered. Children who had been born during the occupation watched with wide eyes, seeing their future unfold. Somewhere in the galaxy, on another conquered world, Alien slaves looked up at the stars. They had heard the stories. They knew that somewhere out there humans had fought back and won, and they allowed themselves to hope. Earth was free, and it would stay free, because humans had learned the most important lesson of all. Never give up. Never surrender. Never stop fighting for what matters. The resistance had ended. But humanity's journey was just beginning. The Vrexian command ship hung in the sky above Sol like a dark star. It had been there for 15 years, a constant reminder of who controlled Earth. Now that ship was the Resistance's target. Day One stood in front of the assembled strike team. 15 people, all volunteers. Each knew they probably wouldn't survive. But each also knew that this was humanity's best chance. The plan is simple, Day One said. We use the stolen transport codes to get past their outer security. Yunhee flies us up in the captured shuttle. Once we dock, we split into 3 teams. Yunhee Bayek was one of the few pilots left who could fly anything. She had learned to operate the Vrexian shuttle by watching their pilots and stealing instruction files from their database. Now she sat quietly, studying the flight controls one more time. Team 1 is combat, Day One continued. Me, Taeyang, and 6 others. We create noise, draw their attention, keep them busy. Team 2 is Hana and Sujin. You get to the shield generator and use the weapon. Team 3 is Hyunwoo and his group. You sabotage their reactor. When the shields go down, you blow the reactor. The ship dies. What about getting out? Someone asked. Daewon was silent for a moment. If we get the chance, we take it. But this mission isn't about survival. It's about winning. The night before the assault, the team gathered for a final meal. They shared stories, laughed about old memories, and avoided talking about the future. Taeyang sat with Quan Wu, who had recovered from his injury, and insisted on joining the mission. Your sister will kill me if you die up there, Taeyang said. Quan Wu grinned. Then don't let me die. Jiwon moved among them, checking their medical kits and making sure everyone had emergency supplies. She still wore her doctor's instincts like armor. Even in war, she tried to save lives. Dawn came too quickly. The team loaded into the captured Vrexian shuttle. It was cramped and uncomfortable. The alien seats weren't designed for human bodies. But Yunhee had modified the controls and the transport codes Byung-ho had bought were genuine. Everyone strapped in? Yunhee asked. This is going to be rough. The shuttle lifted off from the hidden landing pad. Yunhee flew low at first, weaving between buildings to avoid detection. Then she angled up, pushing the engines hard. The city fell away below them. The command ship grew larger and larger in the viewport. Transmitting codes now, Sujin said. She sat at the communication station, her fingers dancing over alien controls she had memorized. A tense minute passed. Then a response came back in the clicking Vrexian language. The codes were accepted. They were cleared to dock. I can't believe that worked, someone muttered. Don't celebrate yet, Daewon said. The hard part comes next. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang. The team grabbed their weapons and moved to the airlock. The door opened onto a Vrexian corridor. Empty. Clean. Sterile. Too quiet. Taeyang whispered. They moved quickly, following Hyunwoo's directions. He had memorized the ship's layout from his time studying orbital structures. Left corridor, up 2 levels, right at the junction. The ship was massive inside, larger than any building on Earth. They reached the first junction. The teams split up. Day 1 clasped hands briefly with Hana. Good luck. You too, she replied. Team 2 moved toward the shield generator. Team 3 headed for the reactor. Day 1's combat team continued forward looking for targets. They didn't have to look long. Alarms suddenly screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed. Vrexian soldiers began pouring out of side corridors. They know we're here, someone shouted. Then let's give them something to worry about, Daewon said. He opened fire. The corridor erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts flew in both directions. The Vrexians had better weapons and armor, but the humans had desperation. 3 resistance fighters fell in the first minute. But they took down 5 Vrexians. Fall back, Daewon ordered. Keep them chasing us. His team retreated through the corridors, fighting every step. It was brutal, bloody work, but they were buying time for the other teams. Hana and Sujin reached the shield generator room. It was defended by 4 Vrexian guards. Sujin pulled out the weapon Hana had built. Hope this works on them too, she fired. The weapon hummed and released its pulse. The Vrexian shields flickered but held. Sujin adjusted the frequency and fired again. This time the shields died. The guard stumbled, suddenly vulnerable. The brief firefight ended with Sujin wounded, a plasma bolt grazing her side. Hana dragged her into the generator room and sealed the door. "I'm okay," Sujin gasped. "Do what you came to do." Hana connected their device to the ship's shield generator. The main weapon was bigger, more powerful than the prototype. It would take a few minutes to charge. Minutes they might not have. Outside the door, more Vrexians arrived. They began cutting through with plasma torches. The metal glowed white-hot. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo's team reached the reactor. They planted explosives at key points, working with trained precision. But Vrexian security was closing in. They fought desperately, knowing they had to finish the job. 4 members of Hyunwoo's team died holding off the aliens. But the explosives were placed. They were ready to blow. Back with the combat team, things had gone from bad to worse. Daewon's group was pinned down, taking fire from 3 directions. Half his team was dead or wounded. Tae-yang fought with savage intensity, but even he couldn't hold off the Vrexian soldiers forever. Then Tae-yang made a decision. "Cover me," he shouted. Before anyone could stop him, he charged forward. He threw himself at the Vrexian line, firing his weapon until it was empty, then fighting with his bare hands. The aliens overwhelmed him. He went down under a pile of armored soldiers. No, Kwanwoo started to run after him. Daewon grabbed him. Don't waste his sacrifice. The distraction gave them seconds. The team retreated around a corner. Behind them, they heard Tae-yang screaming defiance, still fighting even as the Vrexians beat him down. In the shield generator room, Hana's device finished charging. "It's ready," she said. Sujin nodded, her face pale from blood loss. "Do it!" Hana activated the weapon. It fired directly into the ship's shield generator. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the entire ship, the shields collapsed. Every barrier, every protection, every defense the Vrexians had relied on for 15 years simply stopped working. On the ground, resistance cells around the world detected the change. Byung-ho, monitoring from Seoul, saw the readings and smiled. She did it. "The shields are down." He activated the communication network. "All units, this is it. Attack now. Attack everything." Across Earth, humanity rose up. Every hidden resistance cell, every secret fighter, every person who had waited for this moment launched their attacks. Vrexian facilities exploded. Alien soldiers found themselves suddenly vulnerable. In orbit, Hyunwoo triggered the reactor charges. "Fire in the hole!" The explosion tore through the ship's power core. Lights flickered and died. The great vessel shuddered. The Vrexian commander realized his ship was dying. In rage and desperation, he activated the self-destruct. 8 minutes until total destruction. Over the radio, Daewon heard Yeonhee's voice. "Get to the shuttle!" Now the survivors ran.